Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this interesting evening this evening, and a particularly warm welcome to you, Dr. Brink. And may I, on behalf of us all, before we start, congratulate you on the award that you received recently, the M.B.E. Very, very well deserved, and obviously much appreciated that you got it by all here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And on top of that, you've also recently been awarded the Guernsey, the Ambassador of the Year. Thank you. You know,
Thank you.
both excellent situations.
Thank you so much.
Nicola, Nicola's going to talk to us this evening about, I'm going to ask her a few questions, but she's going to talk to us about, you know, what's brought her to Guernsey, what she's done in the past, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she's arrived where she has arrived, and that will take us, I hope, until about 3/4 of an hour, and then we'll have a short break, and after that, Nicola's going to talk to us about the project and about the work that she's doing over here, and she's got a little presentation that she's going to show us, and then there will be an opportunity right at the end to ask questions. So, do make yourself at home.
Thank you very
please.
much.
Get everybody here, and do you mind if we sit down? Well, can we start with you were born in South Africa and grew up over there. So can you tell us a little bit about your life in South Africa and your childhood and what it was like over there?
Yes, well, I was born in South Africa. I was born in a place called Durban, which is on the east coast of South Africa. And then we moved when I was about 15 to just after a farming village just outside Cape Town called Franschhoek. And I continued my schooling in Cape Town. I was always interested in the sciences, which wasn't that fashionable when I was growing up, but I loved science, I loved maths, technological subjects, so that was always something I was interested in. I think what we had in South Africa, it was a complicated childhood because I grew up in the apartheid era of South Africa, so it was a difficult country to live in at that time, but we did have a degree of freedom in that we were able to move around freely and so on. So I think from that perspective, being able to have a natural childhood, being out in the open and so on was really important. But as I said, it was tinged by the fact that it was a country that had the cloud of apartheid over it. And that we were very aware of through our schooling, but also through our university time as well.
So after you left school, you then went on to university. But what sort of took you particularly down the medicine route, or has that always been something within your mind?
Well, I suppose it's a bit of a cliche, but I did enjoy sciences. I was passionate about sciences. I enjoyed the technology side of it as well, but I also wanted to work in a field with people as well. So I was really looking to try and combine my interest in biology sciences with the fact that I wanted to have a career that worked with people. So it was looking at both of those, and I guess I just naturally gravitated towards medicine.
Did you go straight into that from school, or did you do what everybody else does and have a year or 2 years off?
No, I did. I actually went to medical school when I was 17 years old. So I was relatively young when I went to medical school, and I qualified as a doctor when I was just 22 years. So it was, and then went straight on into doing my junior doctor time.
And that was practical work in the hospital or in a...
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
So it was practical work in a hospital. I did some time in cardiac intensive care, and I was really focused on becoming a haematologist, someone who looked after people with disorders of the blood. But my career then took a dramatic change.
And this is the point at which you looked at virology?
It did, and I can remember almost...
That must have been quite a strange and not a terribly well-known subject in those days, wouldn't it?
It was absolutely not well known, and in fact, virology had only the year I decided to do it been accepted as a specialty, as a subspecialty of pathology. But I can remember the day I decided to become a virologist I was looking after someone with a bone marrow transplant who had a horrendous disseminated, what's called a cytomegalovirus infection, and was clearly going to die of this infection. And I really was concerned that the diagnostic capability, that the early diagnosis wasn't there. So I went to see the professor of virology, and as I suppose only, by then I was about 24, as only a 24-year-old can do is complain about his services. He looked at me and he said to me, well, you know, if you feel that strongly about it, come and be a virologist. And I thought, you know what, I will. And that's how I got into virology. It was a 5-year specialisation then, so we had to do 2 years of general pathology and then 3 years of super specialisation in virology.
Which you did in South Africa?
I did in South Africa, with my special interest then being looking at the emerging diagnostic technologies that were coming out, the first of the molecular technologies, but also I became interested in cervical cancer at that stage. And my particular interest was mapping the early HIV epidemic in South Africa and looking at the diagnosis and developing diagnostic techniques for that. And that was my special area of interest.
As I already suggested, this was pretty fairly new discipline in those days, so you must have been right at the beginning. So you must have been involved closely in the research and things, looking into that?
Yes, so within South Africa, it was rapidly emerging. We were dealing with a lot of new issues. We had one of the highest incidents of cervical cancer in the world, and that of course is a viral-driven cancer, so it's caused by a virus called human papillomavirus, so that was extremely important. We had the emerging HIV epidemic there, and we were just looking and realising that this was going to have a massive impact on us. And then we had other diseases that were actually causing a large number of children to die, things like measles. And when I was a junior doctor, we had a measles ward, which is something absolutely unheard of. But the immunisation programs hadn't been established. They're now really well established there. But we didn't have widespread immunisation. And I can remember the frustration I felt when you saw children dying of vaccine-preventable disease. And that was another area that I then became interested in, using vaccine-preventable diseases to actually eradicate some of these infections. And if you look at what we're doing in Guernsey now in our program to eradicate cervical cancer, we're using cervical screening, but we're also using our gender-neutral HPV immunisation program, and we're looking to therefore eliminate cervical cancer before the World Health Organization target here. So again, it's carrying those interests right the way through, really.
Taking it with you.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Excellent. Excellent. You studied all of this actually at university in South Africa.
Yes. And I mean, I then at the time, coming to London was slightly coincidental as well, because at the time the Berlin Wall came down, the International Virology Conference was in Berlin. And I went across to Berlin to present some of the work we were doing. At that stage, it was mapping the HIV epidemic in South Africa and looking at how we embedded the new technologies of diagnosis into making our services better. And at that time, I met a second person who had a profound influence on my career, and that was someone called Professor Richard Tedder. And he came after I delivered a talk there, and afterwards he came to me and he said, well, if you're ever in London, come and we'll give you a job. And I thought, you know what? We might do that. And in fact, my husband, who's sitting here, then got a job in obstetrics and gynecology, and so we came over to London.
Right. So when was that?
That was in 1992. I'm about to be corrected, but yes, so quite a long time ago. Yes, yeah.
And did you find that move to London successful? You were able to continue with your virology in the manner in which you hoped to?
Yeah. So I worked at University College London Hospital, and I did 6 months or a year as a junior doctor, what was called a senior registrar in those days. And then I was very fortunate that they were able to make another consultant post. So I then became a consultant, but it was a split consultant senior lecturer post. So I spent about half my time teaching medical students, working on the medical student selection program and running a research program, and at that stage it was really focused on molecular diagnostics. This was a burgeoning field. So sort of like 10 years ago, you'd try and culture a virus, it would take you 3 weeks, and well, so what, you know, no one wants a result 3 weeks after problems occurred. And we were looking then at developing real-time quick diagnosis using very sensitive techniques, not to detect the whole virus, but just that nucleic acid in the centre of the virus. So it was a really, really exciting time. So I did that and had my research project, but then retained my clinical input. I was clinical lead at virology laboratory, but also retained my interest in infectious diseases, so participating in the inpatient service and so on for infectious diseases at University College. So it was great. It was very varied. So yes.
And this Julie, while you were in London, you were beginning to have a family, your own family, is that right?
Yes, so we had our children. Our daughter was born in 1996, our son in 1997. And that was a game changer for us in that it was all very well working 12-hour days when it was just Carl and myself. We were able to go out in the evenings, we went away for weekends, we had a great lifestyle. And we had our children, and I can remember to this day, the day we decided actually what we're doing to our children isn't worth it. So our children were essentially being brought up by nannies, and one day my daughter or my son was ill and went to school, and they phoned me and they said, your son's not very well, and I was the other side of London. It took me just under 3 hours because we had a tube problem. By the time I got back, the poor little thing was lying on the floor of the headmistress's office with a blanket over him, fast asleep. And that Friday, my husband opened the British Medical Journal, and there was a job advertised in Guernsey, and he said to me, how about it? And I said, you know what, I think this is a brilliant idea, let's do it.
So that was in 2003?
Yes, yeah.
You came over here then?
And I didn't work for a period of time, and I so appreciate that time that I had with my children. And what's really interesting now, when I say, well, I took a career break to spend time with my children, I've had several people in Guernsey contact me and said, you know what, I'm going to take a career break as well. You only get one shot at being a mother. It's a very defined period of time, and it's a gift that we're given to bring up our children, and I think that's really important. So having that time with our children was incredibly important. And I think from my perspective, when my daughter went to university, she turned around to me and she said to me, you know, Mum, I've had a perfect childhood. And, you know, what else would you want from your child, you know? And that freedom that they had. And it's really interesting, I was saying to you earlier, is that you'd think children would be less independent coming from an island community. And actually, in many ways, they're so much more independent, because they're used to traveling, they get on aeroplanes, they're used to being independent, getting themselves around. And so actually, they were really well equipped when they went to university, and that they'd done so much by themselves already. So I think it's important to have that perspective as well.
It's an interesting concept. It's not one you immediately think is the way it's working, is it?
No, not at all. And I think, you know, I was just talking to my daughter about it a couple of nights ago, and she's saying all of them managed really well at university because they had that independence of spirit, which I think is so integral to island life, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. I understand your daughter is now back in Guernsey.
Yes, so she came back during lockdown, and I tried not to be too enthusiastic when they said that there was a job available here. So because they were all working remotely, as she came back to work remotely, and then spoke to, in fact, your son, didn't she? So spoke to Stephen, and that was great, and he gave us some guidance. And then applied for a job at one of the law firms here and got the job here. And I was trying to be very super cool and saying, well, you know, if it's right, you know, come home, you know. So it was brilliant. So she's home now, which is absolutely fantastic. Our son's still at Cardiff University.
Would he come back here, or has he done other
I don't know, you know, it depends where he goes, you know, and he's doing medical engineering, so I think it depends where the job opportunities are. It's not easy now, is it? You know, so. Yeah.
So coming back to your time over here, when you originally came here, you obviously took this break, which was obviously very valuable to you, and then sort of you went back into working again.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So I started off, I think by that time, I know my husband said I'm probably driving him mad by then, because we sort of renovated the house and the children were getting older, and I really wanted to get back into working again. And I started off working in the HIV service in Guernsey, so providing clinical care for people living with HIV in Guernsey. And then we established the Guernsey Hepatology Service, looking after hepatitis B and C on the island. Went on to look at tackling unintended teenage pregnancy, and Hannah, I know you were very involved in that as well. So looking at introducing free contraception for the under 21s. And again, it's looking at the bigger picture. So what we were looking at is looking at the outcomes that we would like to see for our kids when they were 20, 30, 35 years old. And what is really clear is unintended teenage pregnancies affects people's chances in life. So people who have a teenage pregnancy are more likely to have mental health problems at 30. They're less likely to be in a stable relationship. They're more likely to be dependent on income support. So it was looking at, trying to take a holistic approach and saying, how can we improve outcomes? Also then wanted to look at the cervical screening programs and bring equity. So at that stage, women were paying for their cervical screening, but were getting free bowel and breast, the population was getting free bowel screening, breast screening was free. So we had an inequity in our screening programs, and bringing that level playing field, making sure that we focus on preventable disease is really, really important. And so did that, and then in 2015 I started on public health, became Director of Public Health in 2018. So.
And then, sort of just over a year, or just about a year ago, you felt that we really must, in fact, I think you insisted that we needed to look into how the island was going to cope in the event of a pandemic. This seems an element of foresight that, looking back on it, is extraordinary. But can you tell us how you arrived at that point?
So it wasn't a case of if a pandemic would occur, it was a case of when it occurred. It was absolutely obvious that we would see another pandemic. At the end of 2019, we're facing challenges with regard to Brexit. And from my perspective, you can always delay things. You can always find a reason not to do something. I felt that it was a case that we were going to see a pandemic, we were due a pandemic. So at that time, I highlighted that it wouldn't necessarily be a flu pandemic, and that actually we could be faced with a novel respiratory virus, and it could be a coronavirus. Now, it sounds like you predicted something, or I predicted something. Actually, it wasn't. That was pretty obvious in that we'd had the emergence of two other coronaviruses that were severely pathogenic into the human race, which was SARS and MERS. One of the viruses that causes the common cold is a coronavirus. So if you got the emergence of a coronavirus that was readily transmissible from human to human, you'd see a pandemic. So the principles of pandemic preparedness was so important, and I felt that we did need to prepare for that. And so we stood our ground in public health, and we said, no, Brexit might come, but this is also really important. And it's been invaluable because we actually, in November last year, refreshed and thought of all our structures. We thought of how, for example, we have at the moment, we have the Civil Contingency Authority, then we have the Strategic Goal Command, the Tactical Cell, and we have STAC, which is Scientific and Technical Advisory Cells. And those all interplay to provide a constant stream of information and advice. And that's been really, really important. We thought about those processes not in the middle of battle, so to speak, but rather in the cool light of day, so to speak.
Obviously, the islands have benefited enormously from that practice, that foresight, and getting on with it, I think.
Yes, I think one of the things I think has been absolutely exceptional about what has happened here is that everyone has worked together, and you kindly mentioned my M.B.E in the beginning, but actually that is really on behalf of the public health team, but also the whole community. because I wouldn't be sitting here today if the whole community hadn't worked the way they had. So I think we've worked without barriers, and I was actually talking about it today with the team, and we're saying it's not a case of it's my job, it's your job, it's a job to be done, who's best placed to do it, let's just get on with it. And it was really, it's really as simple as that. And the political support we've had, the support from the senior leadership team within the States of Guernsey has been second to none. And there have been a lot of people like myself who are perhaps more recognisable, but there are other people, like for example my land manager Mark who has been an absolute rock, and he's certainly one of the unsung heroes. So they're the more visible people, but they're also people who have played equally important roles as part of the team.
It is the team that makes these things work, isn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
That's sort of bringing us up to sort of close towards the sort of present time.
Yes.
But I don't know if there's anything other things you would like to talk about, sort of that's got you to this point.
I think it is working as a public health team. I think what is slightly humorous is that the week after we had our first case in Guernsey, we were due to run a public health awareness week because we thought that no one knew who public health was, and we sure thought we should raise a bit of awareness. And so there was a pandemic's done that one for us, hasn't it? So that type of thing is being. So what we're hoping to do is, as we move forward into next year, we're hoping to take the good lessons from the pandemic. We want to take the lessons learned, good and bad, but we want to look at how we can move forward into a healthier society. And it's quite interesting, the messages we had during the pandemic, people would say to us, well, it's so nice to have time with our children, it's so nice to have time to do things, and we've actually really re-evaluated our lives and what we're doing. And one person said to me, I used to fly through to London once a week, I used to get up in the morning, didn't see my kids, I used to go off to the airport, I used to attend meetings all morning, eat a 2,000 calorie meal, attend more meetings in the afternoon, be so tired that I'd drink 2 or 3 glasses of wine at the airport on my way home, arrive back, snap at my partner, my children would be in bed, and that was my day once a week. And I said, now I get up, I do the meetings by Zoom. He said, I go through to London, probably go through to the UK, planning to do it once a month, once every 6 weeks, and I get up in the morning, go for a run, do my meetings by Zoom, have lunch with my partner, pick my kids up at school, and then do some more work in the evening. And it's that fundamental re-evaluation of what we do. I think it's going to be so important as we move forward. Of course we're going to have face-to-face meetings, of course we're going to have to travel, but looking at how much is required and how much can be done through alternative ways, it's going to be really important, so that improving our digital connectivity has been fundamental and I think really important.
I think there will be a lot of changes.
Yes.
With the way people live. It's some to the better, I think.
Yes.
A lot, as you were suggesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Some to the better, but I think the other thing that lockdown also did is it connected us as a society.
Yes.
And I think so many people have said to me, well, I think my neighbour's over the fence. I've never seen him before, So things like that is really, really positive. People got into walking, into cycling. And part of the Revive and Thrive, which we're working on at the moment, is looking at how we can imaginatively use some of those measures, but not necessarily spend huge sums of money. So one of the things we're talking about this afternoon is whether on a Sunday you could make one part of the island, rotating it around, car-free, so families could go out and cycle. So just little things, as let's use our imagination and look at what we can do. I think that'd be really inspiring if we could.
A very interesting concept, I think. Yeah. Maybe there's be some questions about that later on.
I won't close off your side. Don't wake up on my road.
So clearly you've settled here well in Guernsey, become a very valuable part of the community here. You ever go back to South Africa?
Yes, we went back. My mum's here today as well, so we go back from time to time to visit my older sister there. And but I'm not leaving Guernsey. I absolutely love living in Guernsey, and I'm passionate about the island. And so I'm afraid you're stuck with me. But so yes, it's good to go back and visit, particularly as we still got family there. My other sister's in New Zealand, and so we hope to see her once everything's calmed down again.
And is she doing similar sort of, people tell me that she's doing something not dissimilar, is that right?
No, she does something completely different. We're so blessed and pleased because she's recovered from leukemia, so she had a bone marrow transplant, and so was very, very poorly after that. So we're so incredibly thankful that she's doing so well. And she works in psychology, and her husband is an ENT surgeon in New Zealand, so we're hoping to see them when everything settles down.
Yes, I hope that won't be before too long. We all want to do things sort of things.
Yes.
Well, I think we're bringing sort of perhaps a little earlier than I anticipated, but we're coming to the point where I think we need to start looking, and we might look at what is happening over here now. And I think you prepared a presentation in that regard.
I have, yes.
I wonder, it's a little bit earlier, but I wonder if we should, might take a short break now.
Yes.
And then when we come back, let's pick up, if we can, with your presentation.
Yes.
And talk to us and tell us what it's all about.
Yes, of course, with pleasure.
Is that all right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so if we could just take sort of a 15-20 minute break now, and we'll then, when we come back, we'll pick up, and Dr. Brinks will tell us about the job, what's happening here, and how she and her team, and the team are handling it